Hey YouTube, this is Crypt13 here today, and I am going to be talking about Thoma. Today we're going to be doing a pre-analysis, so please bear that in mind that I won't be getting 100% everything correct in this video. I also stream on Twitch, that's where I did this, so if you're interested in that, come check me out there. We also do calculations sometimes and we play other games as well. So with that said, let's just go ahead and jump into what Thoma is going to be all about. First off, what is Thoma's role going to be? Thoma's role is definitely going to be a support character. He is going to provide a lot of shields for your team, as well as being a decent pyro applicator. Now, that comes with an asterisk because we don't know what his internal cooldown is going to be, so we don't know how well his pyro application is going to be. And right now, as it stands, he does a pyro attack with his elemental burst every 1 second. So if each of those hits applies pyro, he can be a very strong pyro applicator. But if it turns out that every single one of those hits doesn't apply pyro, then his pyro application is not going to be as good. So that's his role, a support, shield, and pyro applicator. Our hope is that he's a good pyro applicator. Now let's go ahead and move on to Thoma's stats. He does have pretty high HP at max level. He goes up to 10,000, but his base attack is pretty low, 202. If we compare this to a bunch of other characters that kind of fill a similar role to Thoma, so if we pull up Diona actually has higher base attack than Thoma, 10 extra base attack, but her max HP is a little bit lower. Not quite 10,000. Her defense is also lower, but I don't think a lot of people really care about this stat. And her ascension stat is cryo damage instead of attack percent. Thoma has attack percent as his ascension stat. Let's take a look at some other characters. What other support characters are there? Barbara, she scales off of HP as well. So her base HP is also not quite at 10k, and her base attack is way lower. HP percent is her ascension stat though. So I kind of wish Thoma had that because Thoma scales a lot on HP. Some of his damage scales off of HP and all of his shields scale off of HP. So Bennett has more HP than Thoma, a lot more, 2,000 more HP than Thoma, but lower base attack. And that's because Bennett increases your attack based on his own base attack, so they definitely didn't want to make this too strong. But Bennett's HP being this much more is kind of interesting than Thoma, even though Thoma is really based all about HP. Kaya has 11,000 HP and 223 base attack, and also 792 base defense. I think all of that is better than Thoma. Yeah, all of that is better than Thoma. It's very interesting. But Thoma does have this attack percent, so he will have more attack after you ascend him. So that's something to think about. But Kaya is not really a support character. You kind of use Kaya for his burst and for cryo application, I guess. But most people play Kaya, if they do, as a main DPS because they really like Kaya. What else? Who else? What other support type characters do we have? Xingqiu. Let's take a look at Xingqiu. Xingqiu's very, very popular. 10,222. 10,331. They're so close. And they both have the same base attack, 202. Xingqiu has slightly more defense, but these two guys, they're so similar. Xingqiu slightly scales off of HP. His little rain swords, they heal based off of his max HP, but that's not really a big part of Xingqiu's kit. Let's look at Xiangling. Xiangling has 10,875. Wow, so even Xiangling has more HP than Thoma and higher base attack, 225 versus 202. Very interesting how they did Thoma's stats. Even though he's definitely designed to be built around HP, they didn't really give him the highest HP, which you kind of hoped that they would have, and they didn't give him an ascension stat that really benefits him too much. I think he definitely would have wanted HP, and we'll explain why as we go on. So that's his stats. So now let's talk about his E skill, okay? Thoma's E skill does AoE pyro damage, and then it's going to create a barrier that's based on his max HP. It's also going to absorb pyro more effectively, so this is basically everything that we have grown to know and love about shields in this game. There's really nothing different besides that his shield can be refreshed, and it has a base shield absorption HP that also scales with his burst, based on his HP. So at its base, his shield is very, very much the same as Diona's, but when you compare it and when you add in his abilities with his burst, that maximum HP of that shield threshold goes up by a lot. It really does go up by a lot. And then the last thing that this does is that it also applies Pyro onto Thoma, so it's going to cleanse any of those debuffing elements on him. So the scaling on his E skill is 234.24 at level 8. I always do level 8 because level 8 is very free to play friendly. All it takes is Ascension 5 and some purple talent books. It doesn't require you to go to the 6th Ascension phase. But anyway, yeah, his E skill scaling is a little bit on the low side. It also has a really long cooldown, 15 seconds, and the shield duration lasts only 8 seconds. But it is possible to keep 100% uptime on this with his burst, and we'll go into that in a little bit. So let's first take a look at the shield damage absorption. Level 8 is 11.52 max HP plus 1300. So this is actually exactly the same as Diona's shield. I think Diona is the only 4-star character that also provides a shield. Someone let me know down in the comments if that's wrong, but she's the only one that comes to mind. So her Icy Paws, you can see it's also exactly the same. It's off by 1 damage here on the flat, but I think that's probably just a rounding thing. So it's pretty much exactly the same in terms of scaling. But since Diona has a lower base HP than Thoma's will be a little bit stronger at level 8 if everything else is the same. Now, in terms of damage, right, 234.24 versus Diona's 67.07 per paw. And if we go over to Diona, I believe she shoots 5 paws out. So you would multiply 5 of those paws to get the base damage on her E skill, and unfortunately that's stronger than Thoma. So 6.7 times, or 67 times 5, let's just plug that into the calculator real quickly, is 335%. So that's 100% more than Thoma's E skill here. And Diona also generates a whole bunch of particles. Just trying to put that in perspective there. Let's take a look at Xingqiu. We already know Xingqiu's E skill is freaking disgustingly high scaling. Yeah, look at this, 560% scaling on this. Cooldown is long though, 21 seconds, but when you run him with Sacrificial Sword, oh my god, this thing is freaking ridiculous. Yeah, Thoma's E skill is not very strong comparatively to other 4-stars and has a pretty decent cooldown, but of course he gives you that shield. Okay, now how about Beidou? I kind of want to look at Beidou. Okay, Beidou's E skill is 206, which is low. It's actually pretty low, but when you hit the perfect counter, it goes up to what is this, 200 plus 250. This is 450 scaling with a 7.5 second cooldown, so half the cooldown of Thoma, and also almost double the amount of scaling of Thoma as well. There you go, there's a little bit more perspective on that. And then one more character we want to take a look at, Xiangling Guoba. Level 8 is 178.05. It lasts 12 seconds, and I think Goba spits out fire every 2-ish seconds. So I think he shoots out fire 6 times. So 178 times 6 is definitely more than 234 from Thoma. But this is also positioning dependent, so of course you might not hit all of the hits. So that is also a caveat there. Let's dive a little bit more into this max shield damage absorption. If you consider the max shield damage absorption, Thoma becomes the best 4-star shielder in the game. This is 31% of his max HP plus an extra 3,500 flat HP. So that's really strong. And this is, in order to get this, you have to cast his burst. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think that the next question that comes to your mind when we talk about shields is, how does this compare to Zhongli? And I already did the math for this, but let's go ahead and pull them up and just do a very high level look at how this works. But I will tell you that right now that Thoma's max shield damage absorption does not power creep Zhongli's shield unless it's against a pyro attack. And if you can actually hit the actual HP shield cap here, which based on his burst and how many times you actually get hits during your burst, you actually don't hit this maximum shield damage absorption if your talents are synchronized in levels. But anyway, on to Zhongli. Zhongli's shield is 20% of his HP, which is lower than this, but Zhongli also has way more max HP than Thoma, an extra 2,000, which actually makes it a lot more close. And then you also have to consider that it possesses this 150 damage absorption versus all elements, which after that's taken into consideration, is better than Thoma's. That's why only when it's versus pyro damage does Thoma's shield work better. That's the only time when it works better. Because they also have this extra fortify, this extra shield strength. They both have 25% extra shield strength with their passive skills, so that's exactly the same. Thoma does not power creep Zhongli's shield at all, and that's good because he's a 4-star, and he should not power creep a 5-star. And then in terms of energy, based on the trailer that we saw, I saw 4 particles gets generated when he casts his E skill. So it's probably going to be 3 or 4 particles, maybe 4 or 5 that gets generated when you cast this E skill, which is pretty good. I know that Xingqiu generates like 4 to 5, so 4 to 5 is a pretty good amount. 4 times 3 is 12 energy, so it will regenerate 12 energy for Thoma if you have no energy recharge at all. So that's pretty good. And so that's going to lead into our elemental burst. Let's talk about Thoma's elemental burst now. So first off, it's going to deal AoE pyro damage upon casting the skill, and it has a very low skill damage percent scaling. You see, it's only 140 versus the E skill was 230, so it's about 100% less damage, less percent scaling damage here. So it's very interesting that they went with that they went for something that was weaker here. And then every time your normal attacks are triggered, it's going to do a fiery collapse that deals AoE pyro damage, and it's going to summon an extra blazing barrier that stacks on your current blazing barrier. This can happen every 1 second. So this goes back to what I said before, that Thoma can apply pyro every 1 second if his internal cooldown actually allows him to do so. But if it doesn't, then his pyro application is going to be weaker than we had hoped. These blazing barriers that are created are identical to his E skill, except in the amount of damage that they absorb, and the amount of damage that they absorb is right here. It's only a very small percentage of his HP. At level 8, it's only 1.8 of his max HP, plus like 200 of flat extra HP. The stacking of this is not very strong, but it does help you get to that maximum shield absorption of his E skill. It helps you get there. You can't actually get there if you are synchronized in skill level, but you do get kind of close. And again, you don't have to actually deal damage or hit an enemy. All you gotta do is use a normal attack, so it's very similar to Xingqiu's rain swords. All you gotta do is swing, and then it's going to deal AoE pyro damage and give you a stack of extra blazing barrier shields. So this is going to last 15 seconds, has a cooldown of 20, and has a very high energy cost of 80. However, it is possible to keep 100% uptime on this shield if you can keep up Thoma's elemental burst. This is because the shield lasts 8 seconds, and every time you do a normal attack, it's going to completely refresh this duration. 8 plus 8 is going to be 16 seconds, but the cooldown for your burst is going to start immediately when you cast your burst. So as long as you can cast it and you do a normal attack before your shield actually expires, then you're good. So that's Thoma's burst, as well as his fiery collapse. We should talk about his fiery collapse. It's pretty low scaling, 92.8. I think that the best comparison that we should do here is probably Xingqiu, because they have very similar bursts where it's based off of a normal attack, and also Beidou, so we'll look at that. So Xingqiu, sword rain damage is 86, but remember that the sword rain, there's 2 swords and then there's 3 swords, and then if you have C6, I think it's 5 swords, so it's 2, 3, and then 5. Thoma, it's only 1. It's always only 1. So comparatively to Xingqiu, a lot less damage, a lot less. Beidou's burst has 150, so this is about 1.5 or 1.75 times stronger than Thoma's. As well as if you have a higher constellation level, this also jumps between multiple enemies. So Beidou's elemental skill, sorry, not elemental skill, elemental burst is also a lot stronger than Thoma's. So in terms of damage, Thoma is not looking too great. He is definitely more on the support shielder side, and hopefully pyro applicator side. That's the hope, at least. So now let's talk about his passives, because one of his passives increases his damage on his elemental burst fiery collapses. But let's go through this in order. So his first one makes Thoma the greatest angler in all of Inazuma. Successful fishing attempts will give you a 20% chance at scoring double the amount of fish. So if you care about fishing, then there you go. There's a nice passive passive talent for you, but if you don't do any fishing, this means probably literally nothing to you. Now, the next one is that when your current active character obtains or refreshes a blazing barrier, this character's shield strength will increase by 5% for 6 seconds. This effect can be triggered once every 0.3 seconds and has a max of 5 stacks. This means your shield strength will go up to 25%, which is the same as Zhongli's passive, so that's pretty cool. They have the same amount of extra shield strength, and you are going to obtain and refresh a blazing barrier during your elemental burst. So getting this is going to be very, very easy. You'll get max stacks pretty much all the time as long as you are using normal attacks and not like not doing quick swap. As long as you're using normal attacks, you can get this 25% shield strength very easily. But do remember that Zhongli's shield is also based off of max HP, and Zhongli has better max HP, so in the end, Zhongli's shields are always going to be better, except against Pyro. And then his third passive is that the damage dealt by Crimson Oyoroi's fiery collapses are increased by 2.2% of Thoma's max HP. So this is where extra damage comes based off of Thoma's max HP, which they are definitely trying to encourage you to build Thoma for max HP so that you can get extra damage here. But 2.2% of your HP is really not that much. I did the math here for a Thoma that was built for about 30,000 HP. The extra damage you get from Fiery Collapse is only about 666, and this also is affected by enemy resistances and damage bonuses as well. So the actual increase in damage is something like around 600. It's not that much. This is definitely the same type of damage bonus to Zhongli's Ascension 4. It's just a flat damage bonus based off of HP. Also very similar to Kokomi. Not very strong, if I'm being honest with you. And especially if you have 30,000, this is all you get. So imagine if you don't build him for HP, you try to build him for just DPS, then you don't really get any benefit from his passive. It'll be barely anything. So I don't know. I'm kind of disappointed by this. It doesn't seem that great. It's kind of like a nice to have, but it's not as significant as you would think. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about Thoma's constellations. I think that he has pretty good constellations, definitely his best one being C6, but of course that's C6. The first one is that when a blazing barrier takes damage from any character other than Thoma, then his cooldown on his E skill and his ultimate is decreased by 3 seconds. This effect can be triggered once every 20 seconds, so basically once every time you use your burst. It's a nice to have. It helps you keep uptime on the shield a little bit easier, but other than that, it's not anything to write home about. It's just something that's kind of quality of life. It also sucks that you have to take damage on another character, so people that want to use Thoma as like a main DPS, that's kind of unfortunate. C2 increases the duration of Crimson Oyoroi by 3 seconds, so that's also pretty nice. An extra 3 seconds means that you can get 3 extra stacks of his extra shield damage absorption so that you can hit the cap a little bit easier, as well as more pyro application, hopefully, as well as it matches more closely to his cooldown. So it's going to be 18 seconds and 20 seconds of cooldown. So pretty much almost 100% uptime on his burst with C2. Next one is C4. After using your burst, you will get 15 energy restored back to Thoma. So it's also pretty nice. This also just helps you keep 100% uptime on your burst. So as you can see, Thoma is definitely designed to keep his burst up as much as possible so that he can provide that shield for your team. And so you're definitely gonna want to build him for energy recharge at C0 so you can keep this up as much as you can. And then C6 is an extra damage increase. When a blazing barrier is obtained or stacked, the damage dealt by normal, charge, and plunging attacks for all party members is increased by 15% for 6 seconds. So this is really nice, right? Your active character is definitely going to be using their normal attacks or their charge attacks or their plunging attacks, whatever, if you're playing Shao or something. So this is really nice extra damage bonus, and it's very easy to keep the uptime on this. And especially if you have C6, your burst is probably going to be up all the time. So this bonus is also going to be up all the time. So C6, pretty good, but it is C6. Now let's go ahead and move on to weapons and artifacts. So based off of everything that we just said, it kind of seems like Thoma's weapons and artifact choices are pretty limited in my opinion. Let's go ahead and start with artifacts first. And really the only good ones that I can think of are 4-piece Noblesse set, a 2-piece Noblesse set, and a 2-piece Millilith set. So a 4-piece Noblesse set if you want to have Thoma be a damage buffer as well, but keeping uptime on his burst at C0 is going to be kind of hard, especially if you don't run energy recharge for him because he has an 80 cost burst. So 4-piece Noblesse, it's kind of debatable on whether or not that's going to be the good for him, but it's one of his options. The next one is a 2-piece Noblesse set, and you can pair this with pretty much anything you want. This is just to increase his elemental burst damage because that's definitely where Thoma is going to be dealing most of his damage while he's off the field. The Crimson Oyori Fiery Collapse is going to be where his damage comes from. So that extra 20% damage for elemental burst is going to be nice there. And then you can pair that with whatever you want. Attack percent, extra pyro damage bonus. If you want more energy recharge, Emblem of Severed Fate. If you want more HP, you go 2-piece Millilith, etc, etc. And then the other 2-piece set is, as I just said, 2-piece Millilith to increase his HP a little bit more to get stronger shields, as well as capitalize on that 2.2% extra normal, or not normal, that extra 2.2 damage bonus on his Fiery Collapse attacks. So yeah, in terms of artifacts, I think that, yeah, Thoma doesn't have a lot of options compared to other characters. You don't want to be running Crimson Witch set with him. His E skill is a little bit too long of a cooldown, so you won't be getting much benefit there. And since Thoma is really not meant to be played as a main DPS character, your DPS sets probably aren't going to be that great either. So a Bolide set or a 4-piece Gladiator set, Hail Flame, all those things, not going to be too great for him. Now, what about in terms of weapons? Like I said before, you definitely want to build him for energy recharge if you're at C0 because you want to keep that burst up as much as possible. So anything with energy recharge is going to be pretty good. Prototype Star Glitter, the Catch, Favonius Lance, those are your 3 that gives energy recharge. But obviously, right, the Catch, if you have someone that this is better used on, like a Raiden or a Xiangling, I would rather you do that. So really you have the choices here are a Favonius Lance or a Prototype Star Glitter. And it sucks that there is no equivalent of a sacrificial polearm, because if there was, that would be an amazing weapon for Thoma. Also HP weapons, so Black Tassel is also a very decent option to build more HP on your Thoma to get better shields and to capitalize on that 2.2% HP passive skill that gives extra damage to his Fiery Collapse. Since you're building energy recharge or HP percent, you'll definitely want to build more HP percent here to get better shields and capitalize on that passive skill. Probably a pyro damage bonus here or HP, depending on what you want for your Thoma. If you want better shields, go for HP. If you want damage, go for pyro damage bonus. And then here, probably crit rate if you want consistent crit damage numbers. Or if you want better shields, then just go HP here. If you just want to go for a full HP build, go HP here. You can honestly go full on HP if you just want really strong shields, as well as extra normal attack damage bonus on his Fiery Collapse. But do keep in mind that if you go full HP, your Fiery Collapse would deal better damage if you went pyro damage bonus and crit rate here, because all of those things can crit. So if you can actually hit crits on those, that's better than just building full HP. So bam, that's all I got for you guys for Thoma today. If you liked what you saw, then leave a like to the video and maybe even consider subscribing to the channel. Again, I'm on Twitch, and there is a link to the newly launched Discord down in the description below. So if you'd like to connect to me or talk to me, then that's the place to do it. Until next time, guys, I will see you guys later.